Two Barbas on.
Hello.
Other Barb.
Hello.
Hello.
How's everybody?
Fine
Hey.
so far.
Who's this?
Well, look at Ray's background. For God's sake, Ray, we don't need that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the California fires, don't you know?
Yeah, that's it. That's not sunset. That's the fires, right?
Yeah.
Red sky at night, sailor's delight.
No, for the
I hear it too.
No, red sky at night, shepherd's delight. Red sky in the morning, sailor's warning.
That's right.
Well, that's another way to put it, Eric.
Erica, is there more lightning due? Are you expecting that?
Well, they're talking about maybe we could, but I hope not.
I think
Hi,
it's very.
Janice.
Hi, Janet.
Chris,
morning.
morning.
It's evening for them.
Oh, it's Anne. You look good in the morning, Anne.
This is lunchtime for me. So actually, I've had my lunch.
I hope you enjoyed it.
It was very good. Yeah, it was good.
So Barry, did any of you guys hike on Friday there?
No, it was just, I was cautiously optimistic. I got out of bed, I put my clothes on, and then I went outside and I'm going, the air is just terrible. And so I just,
Yeah.
my lungs are in pretty good shape and I don't want to test them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd have to hike with an N95 mask, which is not easy.
Yeah.
What are the numbers down in San Jose, the air quality?
Well, when I looked at our area at 7 o'clock this morning, it was 99.
Oh,
It was yellow.
Mine-
It was
yeah,
yellow.
mine was red. It was 1:30 at
Oh,
around
yeah,
8
well,
o'clock.
what time was that, Jean?
Around 8 this morning.
Okay.
And it was about that yesterday too, so.
Yeah,
It doesn't-
we went up to like, I think 150 or 160 yesterday,
Uh-huh.
you know.
Huh.
Not good.
Because you're a little closer, I think, but maybe, I don't know, maybe not.
It doesn't matter where you are.
It spreads pretty,
It was yesterday. I looked. It was all the way to Yosemite.
Wow.
The whole area, almost from the coast all the way to Yosemite was
oh
already.
gosh. Oh.
I'm up here in Oregon, and it's very, very bad up here too. It's really, really smoky where I live in Klamath Falls.
Oh wow! Are you calling from Klamath Falls right now?
I sure am. I'm sitting in my house in Klamath Falls.
What's the air quality index there?
I don't know. I should know that, but I don't.
People up there probably have it. They have it listed. If you just go AQI, and you can.
It's pretty bad, I'll tell you. I was up in the forest yesterday, and it was everything's blue. You can just see a blue haze over everything.
Well, that picture that Tom sent last night of the sun in Idaho, was that?
Yeah.
Oh, we saw the moon last night, and it was beautiful because it was going, the pollution was there, and there was a crescent moon up here in Oregon, and it was really pretty.
Okay, it's now 11:01. I'm gonna start, and
Great.
what I'd like everybody to do is, if possible, is to take their microphones and mute them so that if you're eating or whatever you're doing, that we don't all partake in that. If you have any questions at the end, we'll have some time to ask. But I'm just gonna kind of wander through these pictures, and let me start. This is I've got it. It's called Burma or Myanmar. Well, the country has had both names. Originally, it was Burma, and in 1989, the military junta, the group of people that are running the country, changed it to Myanmar, mostly because Burma had too much of the English or the English feeling to it. But the military is the one that has been in charge of Burma or Myanmar ever since. One of the interesting things about, sorry, let me just see if I can get this to work. There we go. Here is a map of Burma or Myanmar, and you can see that the upper right-hand corner is China. So it's right, China is a large part of their border. Laos is another part of their border, obviously, Thailand, and then Bangladesh you can see off to the side. One of the things to understand about Burma is that it is primarily, it's a population of 54 million people, and it is primarily a Buddhist country. And they have a very small Muslim population, which is about 1 million people. And they live, if you can see my pointer, right along the coast here. And this is an area called Rakhine Province. And this province in the last couple of years is what you've seen, where the people, the Muslim people, they call them the Rohingya, R-O-H-I-N-G-A. The Rohingya, the military has basically tried to force them out of Burma, and they're forced them into Bangladesh. And so many of the people, which is, like I said, there's almost 1 million Muslims in Burma, they are an oppressed minority. And but the Burmese in general are all Buddhists, and they just really want to let things be. But the military junta, which is the group that is running Burma, really doesn't want that to be. They're trying to get rid of the Muslims. The military leaders right now, there is a leader that, if you remember, her name is Aung San Suu Kyi, and she is the daughter of the original leader of Burma, which is in the 1940s, 1950s, and his name was Aung San. And the military assassinated him in the early 50s. And from the 50s on, it has been run basically by the military with nothing good coming out of Burma. And his daughter, Aung San Suu Kyi, is now the vice president, or the person, the figurehead, but the military is absolutely still in charge. That's just a little bit of background for you on Burma, and their main income in Burma has been, or Myanmar is currently right now, 25% of the world population of heroin comes out of Burma. So huge export market, obviously. Their second biggest export market are minerals. And so they're very heavily involved in gems, whether they are rubies or pearls. Anyway, but it's all of the ruby mines are run by the military. So they basically, the military is just raping the country of everything. It just continues on to this day. But on the brighter side of this country, it's one, you're going to see some pictures. This is one of the most amazing places I've visited so far. Here, let me go back real quick. We are going to start this little tour. I flew from Bangkok, which is at the bottom of your picture. It was San Francisco to Bangkok, which is $800 round trip. And then I I spent about 3 days in Bangkok. And then from Bangkok, I flew up to what's called Mandalay. And if you'll see Mandalay, where I've got the blue arrow, Mandalay is on a river called the Irrawaddy River, which cuts right through the middle of Burma. And so Mandalay is a really interesting town, but it gets more interesting as you go down the river. So let's continue on. Other direction, sorry. Okay, so in Mandalay, this is not a picture I took because I couldn't have gotten the shot, but this was one of the first temples we went to. What you see there are two two developments. All the white are, and you'll see more of these as we go, are called stupas, and stupas. And stupas are memorials to monks, memorials to important people. So that's why there's so many of them. And they're just a place, as the hundreds of years or thousands of years, that it's a memorial to go back to these people. In the center of it, you again have a very large stupa, and that is a place again of reverence where people would go. It's a Buddhist community, like I mentioned before, and with the Buddhists, what you end up having is, this is an actual picture. These are now my pictures of the inside of this. So when you enter any Buddhist area, you always have to take your shoes off. So as you'll start to see as we go, if I knew which direction we were going, okay, there is one of the walls around the whole facility. As you're inside, obviously you can see as you're walking around, it's relatively, Myanmar is relatively untouristy. There are a few tourists that you'll see, but you'll mostly see is the local people walking around. This gentleman right here, you'll see in quite a few pictures. He's my traveling friend. And so here we are in the inside of one of these beautiful temples. And you can see a few backpackers sitting around, but again, everybody barefoot because it's respect to Buddha. And at the same time, it keeps the place very clean. Inside, you can see that again, the Buddha is a centerpiece of everything in Myanmar, as it is in so much of Southeast Asia. This is an interesting thing. So after our first couple of hours of being there, we were told that we should be, if we wanted to be part of the local and be respectful of people, that you would change your dress. And here, what we ended up doing, this cloth is called a longi, L-O-N-G-Y-I, and it's worn by both males and females, and it is worn with nothing underneath, which obviously I didn't do, but it's but you'll see this in many of the pictures. It's just a sign of respect, and it's a way that you tie the knot in the front, but everybody in Myanmar wears these. Here we have a monastery that was built in the late 1800s, and it was built out of teak. You can see the teak work here. I mean, it's amazing that any of this wood even survives. One of the interesting things is that you're going to start to see is when I arrive in most of these places, my #1 favorite way to travel is I get off the airplane and I walk out to the taxi stands and I ask a couple of questions. First question, how much is it for you all day? #1. And then, you know, is, do you speak English? And if those two I get affirmatives and I get a good price, then I hire them. So many of these pictures and things you're going to see are from a local's perspective, because my interest normally is not necessarily in all of the touristy stuff. I'm looking for, what does the average person do there? How do they make a living? What do they see? What temples do they go to? Not everything else. So this is a local temple here that, again, you're going to see no people here. It's a wooden temple, which, like I said, is amazing that it even survived. Inside this temple, what you end up having are scrolls that the monks have been writing on for the last couple 100,000 years. And so the taxi driver takes us inside, and he knew the guy who was running this, and he says to the man, he said, these people would like to see these scrolls. So they start opening up these boxes. And inside each one of these boxes are these bamboo scripts that are just, I've got many pictures of them individually, but it's way too much. But it's just interesting to see, because the Burmese have kept their history on these bamboo scrolls. So from here, we went to a Buddhist monastery. So here what we have is that most young male and females in Burma are almost required to become Buddhists, whether it is for 6 months or 5 years or their whole life. So this is a monastery, and you can see the young kids in the monastery. These are young ones where they have to understand what Buddha is all about. They start from the age of 7 till 13. They enter the monastery, and it's just the way that their living goes. I wanted to see where does the food come from. So I went to the kitchen area. So here we have the kitchen area. The 80-year-old woman here who's squatting down, not sitting, squatting, right? Which is, I've been doing yoga a few years. I can still not do well, but she is at 80, feet flat, but she's been doing it all her life. She's cutting beans. And so, because they're feeding the locals. So I walked over to see their way of heating the food. So here we have the stove. We have the big vats where they're making the food, but you can see there's no FDA standards here. On the outside of the building, these are the writings, first in Burmese, and then they translated it for people to come by, what the Burmese monks have to start to learn. To have good heart is the first. To pay respect to the code of the monastic discipline is the second. To be healthy is the third. To be clean is the fourth. And if you read down these, they're so rational, and it's just the way of life for them. This is something that they all have to learn. So as we're leaving this monastery, I'm getting into the taxi cab, and this woman walks up to me. And what she's asking for is some money, because again, they're very, very poor. They have absolutely nothing. So what you're going to see in a lot of these pictures are these people all have this yellowish white cosmetic paste on their face, and it's called tanaka, and it's made from a ground bark. And what they use it for is two reasons. One is for the sun, and two is to be able to give some flair to their lives, because you can see this woman, she may not have absolutely anything, but she's taken her baby and she's taken the time to put this beautiful design on her baby's face. Anyway, it was just one of those pictures. Here's an interesting one. So when you're in Mandalay, I showed you before, there's a river that goes through the country. It's called the Irrawaddy, and I was there in the wintertime. Well, wintertime means that the Irrawaddy, like the Mekong, is low. So the people are so poor that in the wintertime, as the river goes down, little bits of land show in the river. So as the little bits of land show, the poor go out onto those land spits and they build a little house and they live there until the winter rains come. So you can see these are just a couple of the places on the Irrawaddy where spaces come out, and the locals will fish there, they'll live there, and anyway, that it's just a very poor, very basic lifestyle. You'll see it all over Southeast Asia in the poor areas. Whenever the Mekong or the Irrawaddy goes down, they start to build. So I asked the taxi driver from here, I said, now, what do the locals make here? And he says, one of our big factories is making woks. So I said, take me to the wok factory. So here we went to the wok factory, and I walked in, and it was beyond me to understand what goes on here. And you're going to see a few of these pictures. In the center of the factory, you have this large burner that the man in his thongs is feeding coke and different products to get the fire hot enough so that they can melt the steel to be able to pour it. So the guy, you can see, they're working in this environment that is just so hostile, but they're walking around in thongs because they're poor, they have nothing. So here's this kid standing in front of this fire pit, feeding it. And at the bottom is pouring out sludge on one side with all these coals. And what they're doing is they're trying to heat up the molten steel high enough so they can get it into a liquid form to pour it into the molds. So now here you have a mold and you have 4 guys all wearing their longies, right? You notice the longies, they may be hattered and tattered and everything, and they got their shoes on, but it's just, nobody seems to care about safety or anything like that. But this was a factory of commercial woks, and they produced a lot of woks there. And there's a molten one that's come out of the form. So I said, okay, well, let's go to another. What else do you guys make here? Well, we make shoes. Okay, so here we are, people making shoes. And so, you see these colorful shoes in the markets, but you never think about how they're made. But these people are sitting around with glue on their hands, smearing it on the bottom to be able to put a sole on it. And the guy's, is taking his brush and trying to, anyway, it's horrible, but it's their way of life. So as we left there, we looked to see, how do they build a building? Well, here they are putting the foundation in, right? And so we got a garden hose and some sand in there, and at least they got a string line to know what's straight, but it's just interesting. So we left here, and I wanted to go to, I said, show me another really nice monastery in Mandalay. I mean, here he took us to this place, which is just staggering how beautiful it was. One of the things about these monuments, as I said before, the very first picture I showed you were called stupas, and those were monuments that the people cannot go inside. Pagodas, and this is a pagoda, is a large stupa, but it allows you to go inside. So this is a pagoda because you notice on the right-hand side, there are stairs that go up and you can go inside. So that's the difference between what's called a stupa and a pagoda. Not that that's information. As we're driving, you'll see this in many parts of Asia, but these are Buddhists. And so in the morning time, the Buddhists walk around and they walk in groups. These are women Buddhists, and they're also called monks. And so the women all wear this pink. They have no hair, they're all shaven, but it's just they walk. And what they're doing is that no matter how poor you are, you basically give a little bit of something to one of the Buddhists in the morning time, whether it's a little bit of rice or whether it's something extra that you have. And that's the only way the Buddhists make how they eat, because they have no money, they make no money, so it's the community that feeds them. But the women are the ones in pink. Here is a very old cave monastery. This is about 1,000 years old, where in the heat, the old monastery, they used to go inside, because obviously when you go into the hill, it is a cool area. Again, there's many pictures, but it's too many to show, but it's just the inside of this monastery in the side of a hill. So the Buddhist monks, there were these little cells that they would go into. And so I went into one of the cells to sit down just to see what it feels like to be quiet and have no sound and have this cool area that you can be in. So it was interesting. So we left that monastery and we went to the outskirts of town here to see, and he showed us, again, this is not a pagoda, it's not a stupa, this is somebody's modern version of the old ways, and they built it in the side of this farm. Here we are, we're now heading down to the Irrawaddy River. And so the Irrawaddy, like I said, goes all the way through the middle of Myanmar, and you can see how much land shows up in the wintertime because of the water going down. And as you look around in the surroundings of Mandalay, you can see how many pagodas, stupas there are, because over the 1,000 years, every leader, every monk wanted to have some remembrance of him. So it's all over the countryside, just thousands of these. And so you notice these boats stopping on the Irrawaddy to unload or park. Well, there are no docks because the Irrawaddy, like the Mekong, goes up and down so much. They just stop on the sandbars. The trucks come in and they unload. You know, they're very practical people. This is the other side of the same thing. We went to that pagoda that you're going to see in a second. That's the one you saw on the far side here in the middle, the large one where the radio tower is. That's this one from the other side looking across. Inside, I find these young monks, and so I sit down amongst them, and some of them spoke English, and they were as curious about me as I was about them. It's like, why do you do this? I mean, it's just, they're such fun people to talk to and to be around. So here, as I mentioned, we were in Mandalay, and we jumped on a boat in Mandalay to go down the Irrawaddy to a town called Bagan, B-A-G-A-N, which is just an amazing place, which we're going to start to go to now. So I'm now on this boat. It's about $35 to get on a boat first thing in the morning until the end of the day. You're floating down the Irrawaddy, and I mean, I can't tell you how inexpensive the country is. $35 to them is just a small fortune. So this is luxury living on the Irrawaddy. So as we go down the Irrawaddy, as you saw that there were so many areas that you saw land. Well, they have a guy on the front of the boat who's constantly doing a measurement of how deep the water is. So he's yelling out to the captain, how many meters deep is it? Because the captain, the shifting sands of the Irrawaddy always change, so there's no good charts for us sailors that know that we rely on our charts. But here it's all soundings. They have to know how deep it is. So I went up to the captain to see, how does the guy navigate? What does he do? Well, here's the guys in there, one on his cell phone, but one guy at least is looking straight ahead, and he's listening.
For you.
Okay, we got somebody talking. If they wouldn't mind muting, I'd appreciate it. So as we go down the Irrawaddy, one of the bad things about Burma is that they're next to China, and China has a huge amount of pollution in the air, as we've had in San Jose the last couple of days. So China constantly is exporting their air over Burma. So Burma, you'll start to see their air is just not very good, because it's all the Chinese coal and all the burning. And in Burma, every day, every peasant, how do you get rid of garbage? You burn it. So you get millions of people burning garbage, the Chinese burning everything. And it's just like, anyway, the air is the one thing in that country that's not very good. This is the boat. So it was a very pleasant boat as we went down the Irrawaddy. The guy would serve you whatever you wanted. You could lay on the deck. One of our first stops, this was actually on the side as we're going. It's just a peasant lifestyle who are living on the river. But you can see the Irrawaddy, how high it comes when in the wintertime, in the summertime when the monsoons come, how high it comes, because it comes up to the bottom of where those houses are. As we're going down the Irrawaddy, one of the things that you'll see is a lot of traffic. And so this is a person who is obviously selling bamboo. And you can see the boat in the front pulling the bamboo. But they put somebody on the back who lives on the back as they go down. So here's a guy living on the back of the bamboo raft who kind of is there to keep everything together. If there's a string breaks or something breaks, at least you got somebody back there to deal with that. So again, just traffic on the river, typical boat going up and down the Irrawaddy. Our boat stopped to pick up some people here. So again, they don't have docks. So how they do it, they just come over to the side of wherever the water is. They pull over, they put the plank down, and you notice the handrails. They're not code handrails. These are bamboo poles held by two people. So that if you want to get up and down, they hold it for you depending how high, how big you are and how small you are, so you can hang on to something walking up in the plank. So here's a woman who you'll see in a second again. She came out of this village walking down to the river, and the previous slide I'm showing you can see the woman. She walked down because she's getting water because they don't have water, right? The only way to get water is to get it out of the Irrawaddy. Well, this woman grabbed some water. Now she's walking back up to her village to go get to bring the water back. So I got off and I walked around the village, and you can see how primitive it is. You know, I mean, it's again, they have nothing. These are the people that live in the village. The main thing that they have here is peanuts. Peanut grows rampantly everywhere. So everything is around peanuts. So you'll see on the ground here, they lay the peanuts to dry them and then to roast them. The women here are separating the husks on some of them, but you'll notice that some of these women, again, have that sandalwood material on their face for the sun. So we left that village and we're continuing down the river, down the Irrawaddy, and you continue to see as you go all of these temples. So we now come into Bagan. Bagan is the main area where the kings and all of the old rulers used to live. So our boat again comes over. You can see the people on the shore. They're waiting. They're waiting because they want to carry your luggage. They want you to give them some money, any money, because Bagan is one of the only tourist areas. So this boat comes in and he jams into the sand. And then what you end up having is, again, the board goes out, and now you can see a couple of backpackers walking off and the couple of guys holding the bamboo pole so they don't fall off because they don't want to lose the tourists because they're the only ones with money. And the guy standing down below going, okay, like at the airport is the Thompson party or whatever party, because they're looking to take you to a hotel. So it's just an interesting form. So Dave and I, first thing we did was head off to a market because I wanted to see what the markets are like. And so here we have a typical Burmese market, you know, very nicely done, great fruits and vegetables. And this woman comes up to me, and again, she wants money because I'm a white person, and I'm the tourist, and I don't look like them, obviously. So, but you notice this woman, 2 kids, and what does she have in her face, like everybody else does, is this chalky, yellowish paste, but they all have it. And some people are very creative with it. One of the things and I'll explain this more later, but look at her teeth. Her teeth are red. And I'll explain this later and you'll see more of it. But this is because of something that they chew called the betel nut. So as we left the market, we go with a taxi driver I wanted to go to a place you can see in a second. And I saw this little farmer guy who had a stand out, and he was selling peanut oil and peanut liquor, and everything revolves around peanuts. So I wanted to see, well, how do they make peanut oil? How do these farmers make peanut oil? Well, here's how they've been doing it for 1,000 years. So they got a guy who sits on the back of this board, and his cow goes in a circle all day long. And all he's doing is taking the peanuts that they continue to feed in the center of that, and this continues to take the oil out of the peanuts as it's going. And at the bottom of this, you have peanut oil dripping out into a jar that they then sell. So that's how they make some money. Here's his wife. She's making what's called hooch. Basically, it's liquor, because again, she's trying to make some money So she's got some hooch there you're going to see in a second. She's got some food cooking that she wants to sell. But what does she heat with? Palm leaves. Because the only thing that they have hardly any wood, so they burn palm leaves. So she's got her little fire going. But here's the hooch that she's got going on another stove, because she's getting the drippings out of it, which is the liquor that is made out of the clear oil that is coming out of the peanut oil. But again, what's it heated with? A little bit of wood, because it needs to be hotter quicker, but they don't use it for their wood. Okay, this same family is out. So I walked around the side. I wanted to see what were they doing. Well, what they were doing, this was wash day. So on the left-hand side, you can see a 55-gallon drum of fresh water they bring in. Those round tubs are their washing machines, meaning the women put the clothes in there with the water that they've dumped in, and one is soapy, and so they wash it. The next one is rinse. So this is what happened to be wash day. So, you know, every time we do our wash, be happy that we have any kind of washing machine, because how they live and how they eke out is just, it's beyond, it's going back 100,000 years. So what I wanted to see was an area, this is called Mount Popa. And this is a monastery on top of one of the only high peaks in this area. It rises 2,100 feet above sea level. And this was a monastery that was built. To get up to it, you have to walk up the stairs, which you'll see in a second. So at the bottom of this monastery, they have an area that you got to walk by, and these are called nats, N-A-T-S, and these are the spirits that keep Mount Popa safe. So this is a way of thinking. This is their religion, part of their religion. These are the spiritual beings that keep the area safe, and they're called nats. And you'll only find gnats in this area. So don't ask me why, but it was just interesting. So here we are going up the stairs. There are 777 stairs going up to the top. And as you go up, what you end up having is Mount Popa is full of monkeys and poor people. So, and because it's a Buddhist retreat and a Buddhist place, you're not allowed to have shoes on. So now you're walking up these, at the bottom, metal stairs, eventually become stone and full of monkeys. And what do monkeys do? Monkeys shit. So you have monkey shit all over these stairs going up. You have bare feet. And so you are very happy to give the poor people along the way a little bit of money to keep the stairs clean so your feet don't walk through it. Again, here are a couple of monkeys. So I've now reached the top of Mount Popa, and so it's a Buddhist retreat, and so you ring the bell, and it's just an interesting place. Here we are at the top. There's Dave again. You can see him. We're looking out. You can see the surroundings, a small community. So after leaving Mount Popa, our taxi driver dropped us off. We spent the night. The next day we woke up, and so now we want to go see all the monasteries and the pagodas, because Bagan is famous for an area about 16 miles square of thousands. They actually say about 3,000 pagodas and stupas that you're going to see. And in my silly mind, I'm thinking a good way to do this is on the back of a horse, because now he can pull us around dusty roads and we can go see these places. So we hired this guy to take us around. So now we're being led around, and we're all excited in the early days and the early hours of being pulled around. But 2 hours of this, your back is hurting and the dust, because there are no paved roads. But you're seeing things that are just, I mean, it's like I said, going back 1,000 years. Here's one of the structures that was built 1,000 years ago. I mean, it's spectacularly beautiful. This is a pagoda. It's to me, they're the third wonders of the world, what the Burmese have done. And so these we're seeing because we're either climbing up into a pagoda, shooting the picture out, But what you're seeing is the background, and the background is the Chinese air again, because like our air we've had in the last couple of days, it's all being fed by the fires, by the bad pollution. So air is a real issue there. But it makes some phenomenal colors. Here at the top of this pagoda, Dave and I are sitting here. What we're waiting for is the sun to go down. We want to see the sun go down through the pagodas. But you notice again, we have bare feet because it's a Buddhist retreat. You're not allowed to wear shoes. So no matter how dirty or what's going on, bare feet are the call of the day. What the Burmese have done, which is very interesting, is that on these couple of 3,000 different pagodas, stupas all over this countryside, they have given, the government smart in this way, they've given a family a place to live, and this is a family's house, and what their family's job is to keep the area picked up of litter and keep it clean. So if there's any tourists that come by, it will not be dirty, it will be clean. So this is a typical pagoda that you're able to see. You can go there, walk around, but there's a family always living there. Again, some of the shots looking out at the landscape. It's hard to imagine how many of these there are, but wherever you look, there are pagodas and there are stupas. And the Burmese somewhat take care of them, but generally they don't. It's just time is just slowly eating them away. I mean, this, again, beautiful old pagoda that you can go inside. Again, Dave and I were going to lunch here, and somebody coming up, and we give them a few of their currency, which is a useless currency, but so you give them some currency because they're begging. But you can see again their sandalwood material on the kid's face. The mother is drawn. So the next day we decide, okay, donkey carts are not the best way to see Bagan. So we said, okay, what's the next best way to see it? A balloon. So we found a company that had a balloon that we could get on. And so the next morning we come out and we jump onto this balloon, and there are 8 of us in the balloon. So we have a British person in the center who is raising and lowering the balloon as we go. And then we have mostly Chinese tourists, because you're so close to China, it's easy for them to come in, that jump into the balloon. There's 2 people in each. So as we rise up, you start to get the immensity of Bagan, of how many of these pagodas there are in the landscape, my naivety thinking that I could be in the back of a donkey cart and see this, and not be choked, because now we're flying around in a balloon, and it's just you get the sense of how large it is with some of these shots. You look down, I mean, these things are 1,000 years old. Nobody comes to see them. They're pagodas with the doors, and then there's a stupa, probably a monk that needed to have his memorial there. This is one of the more amazing ones, a very large pagoda. There is still some greenery around it because the family that's living there, you can see them off in the upper right. They maintain all that, keep things not fertilized, but keep things wet. So we're just floating along for a couple of hours in the morning, seeing the pagodas from the air, looking down. And one of the reasons that the air is so bad, because the Burmese, even the people who take care of these, burn everything. So here you can see the remnants of the burn around the pagodas. Instead of cutting the grass down, they'd rather burn it down. And so you can see that the farmers around it use the fields around it. So when we landed with our balloon, obviously balloons don't stop in one area, they just float. So here we floated into a farmer's field, and this farmer was just pissed because here we have about 8 or 9 balloons floating down onto his fields, and he's trying to make a living. And so the good thing was that our English pilot who took us ends up, he explained to me, he says, look, we pay these people, he says, when we get done, he says, we give them extra money if we land in their field, because it's another way for them to make money, because with a balloon you have no idea where you're going to land. So as we left here, another this is a 1200, you're going to see in a second, a 1200-year-old pagoda. I mean, still in relatively good shape. I mean, these pagodas are there. Each one is a masterpiece in itself, and they're just everywhere. The time we were there, you can see some of the female monks. They were going up because you could go inside of them. So one of the things I looked for is artwork, Mitsu, and one of the artwork, one of the interesting pieces of art they do in Bagan is called lacquerware. And lacquerware, it is a material that comes out of a tree, and you see it in Japan, you see it all around the world, and it's usually trays and things, but in Burma, they do lacquerware a little differently. They do it out of bamboo. And so the bamboo is first made, and then they put lacquer around it. And the lacquer comes from a tree. And this takes like months, 6 months to make one of these bowls or one of these pieces. But the lacquerware is put around, and then they polish it, and it's polished with ash. It's polished with teak ash. So you can see this guy, so he doesn't have an electric motor driving this. He has a stick moving back and forth because he's using teak ash to make this shiny so a tourist would possibly buy it. But the material that they have, that they're making the colors out of, is all local stuff. It comes out of the ground or comes out of a tree or whatever. I mean, here's part of a stone, a large stone where he is grinding. It's not a very good picture because it didn't come out well, but he's grinding with another stone the colors. So when they have put these different colors onto this lacquerware, and they put different coats of it on, the women sit there, and they're generally very young women because their eyes are good. They use a very sharp X-Acto knife to cut into the lacquerware, and then they put a little bit of color into it. And as I said, internally holding this all together, this lacquerware is bamboo. But what the Burmese have done is one other thing. They make cups out of it, and the Burmese then wrap the bamboo in horsehair. Okay, they put horsehair around the bamboo, and then they put lacquer around it, so that when the finished product is finished, you have a cup that when you grab a hold of it, it's not stiff, it is movable, because the horsehair inside allows it to move. I mean, it's amazing old technology. But these women with this is where the art and the craft comes in. They are making all the designs, all done by hand, not laser cut or anything, all done by hand. And this is what they do all day long. They sit on these grass mats and make this. And so as we're leaving Bagan, I'm heading to the airport, and I got a quick shot of one of the local transportation vehicles. You'll see these vehicles everywhere. A farmer has them, and it's a motor in the front that moves, obviously, and he's driving, moving it around. But this is how they pull things, push things, move things, and it's just a motor on the front of a tricycle, basically. So we've now gone from Mandalay down the Irrawaddy to Bagan, and now from Bagan we flew on an airplane to Inle Lake. So Inle Lake is another very interesting place that we're going to go to, and here you can see is Inle Lake. probably in the vicinity, they say, of about 500,000 people live on this lake, around the lake and on the lake. You can see where the airport is at the top, and then we ended up going to this town, Nanthe, Nanthe. So our hotel room, which our taxi driver, who arranged for us when we got off the airplane, I said, we need a hotel. So we found us a really nice place, like $35 a night. And so we each had our nice room. So Dave and I had a few beers, went to dinner. I think maybe this cost us $7 or $8, you know, for both of us. I mean, it was just the beer and good food. We leave here now, and we're now going to go down to the lake. And the lake, they do have Chinese that show up, and some American, very few Americans, but mostly Europeans, and they take you out on the lake in these boats. So these boats, if you notice, have a very large shaft going out the back with a propeller at the end, and you'll see eventually why. But so we met a couple from Slovakia, which you'll see in a second, who helped pay for this boat. So for 2 days we were on this boat, and for one day it was like $40, so we split it, and it was $20 each, and Dave and I split it, I think it was $10. So, you know, it's just nothing money, but you end up giving these people a little extra. You give them an extra, you know, whatever it happens to be, and they're just so grateful. So as you get onto the lake is a large lake, and this is how they fish. So you're going to see more and more of these boats, these long, thin boats, and this is how they fish, because it's a shallow lake, and with one leg they manipulate the nets, and they scoop into the water to get a fish. So here's a guy who caught a fish. Oh, look, I have fish. You want to buy fish? No, thank you. So here's another farmer. You can see he's out there just looking to see where he wants to go. He has turned his motor, again, like you saw before, he's turned it around, so his propeller's inward, his fishing net is sitting there, but he's standing in the back, just paddling around, seeing where he wants to go fishing. So we are in this relatively fast boat that we're not paddling on, with these wooden chairs. And so the young couple from Slovakia, they're behind us, who we split this boat with. And so Dave is getting cold. I think we probably hit 70 degrees that day. And so they give us a blanket, a Hello Kitty blanket. So as we get out onto the lake, one of the things you'll see is that all the poor people live on the lake, because when you live on the lake, you pay no rent, and they can charge no taxes. So when you live on the lake and you get your food off the lake, it is just what you can do there. So what you're going to start to see is a lot of these areas that you'll see the housing in the background, and you'll see these bamboo sticks in the ground. And what they're doing is aqua farming. So the aqua farming is they are looking to grow anything here. This water is maybe 4 or 5 feet deep. And you'll see that there is a farmer's house, because he obviously has no land he can grow anything on. It has to be grown on the water. So you can see all these thousands of little bamboo stakes, and that's to keep all of their little plots together. So here's a farmer on his plot, which is in the middle of the lake, all held together by the bamboo stakes, and they're tending to whatever they're growing, you know, whether it's beans or whatever it happens to be. There's another farmer, and what they're doing here, they're harvesting the seaweed. So at the bottom of the lake, if you don't have a plot of land, a plot of water that you can farm, you can pull the seaweed up. So these boats, literally, they lean them over, and they're pulling the seaweed off the bottom to get it in. They take it to the land, and they dry it, because dried seaweed is a food substance. So they use that to sell seaweed to other people to make a little bit of money. So you can see again, all the farmers, I mean, it's either you have a little plot of water that you're working, or you're working the lake for fish, if there are any fish, or you're working you're working the bottom of the lake. But the lake is the way that they get the water. A quick side thing on Inle Lake, it's one of the largest inland water lakes in all of Asia. And so it obviously comes up quite a bit as the Irrawaddy and the different rivers in the summertime come up, but in the wintertime it goes down, but it never totally empties out. So here's your typical person who lives on the lake. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people like this living on the lake. So you can see basically how far the water will come up in the wintertime. My interest also happened to be, it's like you can see where do they store things. So the bottom is storage. The next one, you'll see again the water level, how far the water level come up. But my next question is, where do they go to the bathroom? Right? So on the back of every one of these little houses, if you'll notice, there's always a little shed. It's covered with bamboo. And this one on the left-hand side, you'll see it, right? That is the bathroom area. Well, living on the water, you have no septic system. You have no way to deal with it, right? So the only way they deal with it, it goes directly into the lake, right? So the lake uses them as well as them using them. I mean, it's a weird circle, but this is how people live. So underneath this house, here's a woman doing a wash, right? Because she doesn't have to worry about water. There's water all around. So she's doing her wash underneath her house. But in the back, her husband may be going to the bathroom. So anyway, it's an interesting cycle. Again, a house here, you can see on the lake, a little bit of grass around them where they're growing some whatever they're growing. But you notice they have one thing, they will have TV. Okay, so a lot of these communities, they have put poles into the lake and fed electricity to them. So if they have some electricity, that means they can watch things. And then this house, you can notice, has DirecTV or whatever their system is called. So they can watch how the rest of the world lives, but that's not how they live. So it's just interesting. You know, we think that it's very primitive. It is, but they're still able to, you know, see as the world turns or whatever they want to watch in their little hovels. But again, there's the bathroom on the backside. So little farmer probably going to visit somebody. You notice he's wearing a longi because that's what everybody wears. The house, the mother's sitting up top there. She's got her satellite dish. She's one of the wealthier people living on the lake. Here's the community when they get together and they want to build one of these. They all get together and they buy these poles, these bamboo poles, and the bamboo poles go into the ground. They tie them together, and here's the whole community getting together to build another house for another family to live on the lake. So their only cost is the material of the bamboo, which can be had pretty cheap around there, and the labor, and the community gets together and they all help with it. So here's a little bit of the people who live on the outskirts of the land area, and they also use the bamboo poles for different things. Here you have a farmer living on land, but he used the bamboo poles maybe as a corral for his cattle. There's another farmer farming. So as we go up Inle Lake, it starts to get a little tighter because the water hyacinth, you can imagine, grows pretty prolifically. So the water gets a little tighter. So as we go north on the lake, we come up to these little towns. And these are, again, Buddhist monasteries. They're stupas. They're not pagodas because there's no entrance to them. We stopped here to look at these. These are a couple of 100 years old. You can see them just falling apart. Here, as I'm walking, what do I find? I don't know how old this thing is. I picked it up off the ground, you know, obviously laid it back on the ground, but, you know, I mean, Burma is so full of this unbelievable natural beauty that the military junta and the people that run the country are they're just missing. But anyway, it's just interesting. So again, you can see where I'm standing. There's a stupa, but again, no entrance into it. In the background, a tree has grown all over it, has taken it back, but the other stupas have kept them clearer. So we see a couple of the local women. The women are, you know, these again. We've got my longi on because I'm trying to be somewhat respectful of how they live, but they're very happy, very nice women, and they want to be photographed with us. But she has got a beautiful sandalwood design on her face because the women are proud of their face designs. So as the ruling party of the area, this was a sign. It's the National League for Democracy. And on the right-hand side is young Aung San Suu Kyi, which is the current, not the spiritual leader, the person in charge of Burma, but she and her father is on the left. And he is called actually the father of Burma, but he was the one who was assassinated in 1950. Aung San Suu Kyi, kind of people respect her, but they don't anymore because the military junta still runs the country. She is kind of like, you know, they put her out in front as a nice figurehead, but she really has no power to do anything. But anyway, this was just one of those pictures that I saw. So I said to the guy, I said, take us to a restaurant. So in the middle of the lake, here's a restaurant. The guy lives in the back and he's decided that he wants to build a restaurant. So we get up onto his little restaurant, really nice. And he does just a bang up job, made a really nice lunch for us. And so we had lunch there and then we left. So as we're leaving, here as you can see the American the American tourists visiting this community. But this is our longboat with the 4 people sitting on these loose chairs. They gave us umbrellas, so you know you can see it's the clowns visiting the circus. This was again an interesting pagoda on the north end. We stopped here. This had some interesting things because you'll see a lot of the stupas do not have black tops, and this is a community called the Indian, I-N-D-I-A-I-E-N people, and it's a group of people that live up there, and their specialty is making stupas with the black tops. And it really just gives a really interesting look to the stupas. And these are, again, monks that have died or a leader in the community that's died, and they build a stupa for them. And they're just everywhere. I mean, here's one in almost the middle of the lake, the north end, and you know it's in a farmer's field. The cow's sitting there. So again, water's an issue. So the farmers walk down to the edge of the Irrawaddy to get some water. Here's a farmer. He's transporting some bamboo. This was another very interesting. So wood is an absolute premium there. So when they heat things, as I showed you before, they use mostly material coming from the coconut trees and from trees. Well, here, this was a wood market, okay? So every certain days, every 2 weeks or a week, they have a wood market where if you have some extra wood to sell, you come into this area and you show your wood and people come by and they buy wood because to heat with propane is almost impossible because how do you get propane out there? And so what do you burn? You can't burn every goddamn tree. So you look for these wood merchants that are selling wood. So here the farmers come in and they sell wood. So here you can see their stacks of wood that they're out there. So the Burmese come in and they buy some wood to take home, and their wives are very happy to give them wood to burn, not to use palm fronds or palm trees, which are really hard to light and get going. So while the men are selling things, the women are over cleaning themselves. So here we have a community trough. And so in the center of it is water, and you can see the women either siphoning water out or taking it out, but they bathe over here, they collect water, they do wash. This is what, you know, the community does because they may live in a community where they have almost no water. And so that is their time to clean up. Again, a farmer coming in with his grass that he wants to sell. This farmer again with his bamboo. So we now on the other end of Inle Lake. This is a quick one, and I'm running a little bit over time, but this these are lotus. So again, they got to use what's on the lake. So lotus plant grows on the lake. So what do they use lotus plants for? What they use lotus plants for is a material like silk. So they take the stalk of the lotus plant and they cut it, like you'll see this woman cutting it into pieces, and then she pulls the strand out of that piece and she moves it back and forth with her hand on a wet surface, and it becomes a string that you can see on their far left that she turns, and she's making material out of, right? And so this is the lotus stalk that she takes with her knife, cuts up into pieces, and then pulls strands out of to make lotus thread out of. And then the lotus plant eventually becomes this material. And this material, what the women will do is make scarves and shawls out of to hopefully sell to a local tourist, Chinese or whatever, come by to buy. And I ended up buying my wife a scarf here, and it's an amazing scarf that is made from the lotus plant by these Burmese women. So here's a Burmese woman with her sandalwood on her face, and she's spinning the material, and she's trying to put it into a womb. So a little further in the next building, another way, how do you make more money? Another woman over here, she is making things to smoke. So here is a little bit of tobacco. Obviously, she's bought from somebody, and she uses the leaf, the dried leaf, to make cigars and cigarettes out of. I bought one of my smoked water. It's terrible, but it was interesting. So here is the Burmese people. And I mentioned this early on, use that. You can see that one container has what's called betel nut. It's called an Areca nut. And it's a nut that they use in one pot and they ferment. In the next container is the leaf, and it is a leaf of a plant. And they use what's called lye, L-Y-E, right? And they take this, the betel nut, the leaf, and the lye, and they roll it up. And what it does for them, a person will put this in their mouth, and it's like a stimulant. It's like us drinking alcohol or something, right? So it's a way for them to get high. So in Peru, Eric will know this, they use coca leaves, right? They chew coca leaves. Well, here they're doing betel nut, and they do this all over Southeast Asia, but primarily, or a lot of it in Burma. But what it causes, and so why do the Burmese have this red smile all the time? So I asked this guy to smile because it's hard to imagine. They're happy to have their red teeth like this because it's a sign that they're high all the time. You know, I mean, if you have to live this lifestyle, you know, having white teeth is not the most important thing. So anyway, that's what it does. So I go on a little bit farther. This is a post office. You know, you can see the restroom in the backside, the post office in the front. So if you get any letters, a Burmese family happened to be going by with their little transportation. Again, another pagodas. The area of Inle Lake is just full of it. Here's Dave at the airport in Inle Lake, northern end, and we are ready to fly home. So you can see we're at the bottom of Burma right now in Yangon, is what the Burmese now call it, or the Myanmar people now call it. It used to be called Rangoon, and this is what everybody remembers when it was British run Rangoon, but this is Yangon. And from here we flew back to Bangkok, and then we flew north to another trip. But anyway, that's the end of this trip. And if there are any questions, if somebody's still here after an hour and 5 minutes, you're certainly welcome to ask questions.
That was brilliant, Barry. Did you see any evidence of any of the activity in the Second World War?
No, no. When I went to Cambodia, you will see all of the tanks, and I took lots of pictures of the communist tanks, and you know, you see lots of the war stuff in Cambodia, but in Burma, no, you don't see much of it at all. And honestly, the war, the remnants of the war wasn't my interest. I was interested in the Burmese people. I was interested in how do they live. So no.
I think most of what that would be further north, the Japanese and the British Burma kind of, you know, the Burma campaign.
Yep.
When you saw them go to the toilet and everything, well, you didn't see them, but where did that go? Did that flush into that lake?
Yeah. Sure.
It had no choice but to go into the lake. They have no septic, right? There, so you eat the fish out of the lake, you eat the plants out of the lake. Your plants grow in the lake. Your food source is in the lake, but you also shit in the lake. So
There's a good source of fertilization, I guess.
well, you know, I'm not saying anything. Okay, the way that they flush, honestly, is the Irrawaddy, because when the summertime comes and the monsoons come, all of that water is flushed out, right?
Right.
And so the next time, when I do one in Cambodia, you'll see these lakes. They're just they're immense, and everybody uses it for the toilet, but they use it for every other thing in life. And they're not like 5 people. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people. But it's the flushing that constantly happens every year. And you don't see, the lake is pretty clear. When you're on the lake, you look at the water and you can see the bottom. You know, it's not, you know, how are they supposed to make money? They make no money. They offer nothing to the world.
How many people spoke English there?
Steve?
The actual Burmese, none. Okay, if you were tourist related, meaning if you went to a restaurant, they would speak a little English. So my Burmese is muy poquito. Or 0. So I'll tell you what helps me the most is Google Translate. So you can pull up on Google Translate Burmese, right? And so then you could put it up. You could say, I would like a beer. And then it would say it in Burmese, I would like a beer. So that was probably in that environment helped me the most.
Yeah.
What was their staple then, Barry? When you were in a restaurant, what was the main kind of thing that they ate?
Rice, chicken. I mean, they have chickens. I mean, you don't want to, you know, when I go to Southeast Asia, I love the people and everything. I don't eat any of their meats. I can't do their chickens, because once you see how chicken lives, you can't eat it, right? And then once you see how the sheep and the cows live and the crap that they have to eat, I don't want it, right? So for me, when I go, number 1 rule always is, if it doesn't pop and it doesn't fizzle, I don't drink it, right? So if it isn't a beer or if it isn't a container, I don't drink it, number 1. And number 2 is, it always has to be a vegetable. So I eat off the markets. And so I like rice. They can't screw rice up, right? And so then it's all the beans and all the vegetables, right? Because they can't screw that up.
Yeah.
Barry, you know, in these small, not the pagodas, but the little private ones.
Yep.
There were some of them, these temples, that looked like stone. Where did they get the stone from?
Eric, I don't know. I mean, I will show you a picture of, like, there's a temple in Cambodia called Angkor Wat, and it is all stones. And when you're there, you go, where did they get the stones from? Right? Same question. I don't know. I was not able to find that out because my communication with the people that were there, they're so primitive that things like history and where did it come from, that's not in their vocabulary.
Hey, Mitsu.
Yes.
Mitsu.
Yes.
Didn't you teach, was it Buddhism at one time?
Teach what?
didn't you teach Buddhism at one time?
No, I didn't teach Buddhism.
What was it you taught?
It wasn't Buddhism.
No, but I remember your education.
Mine was in the arts.
Yeah, no, but I remember your father fell out with you because.
Oh, no. I was on the a national board for Buddhist education.
Right.
And so I just worked on the Buddhist curriculum, but not knowing Buddhism because I'm a Methodist, but I knew how to teach. So I created a curriculum for how to teach Buddhism, just a process. So I was on a national board for Buddhist education. My dad was the president of the board in San Jose Buddhist Church. So I worked with all the bishops in the United States to work on how to teach Buddhism using US standards in curriculum.
Right.
So they can then publish a book on how to teach Buddhism in the United States. So, but I didn't know, I couldn't even hardly speak Japanese.
Right, I know that.
Yeah. But I knew how to develop process, and how to teach. So I taught the bishops the correct way to teach it.
Right.
But I didn't know Buddhist, but I had to learn it because I had to meet with the bishops all the time. So they taught me and I taught them. So it's mutual.
But I remember you were saying that your father was upset with you because.
Yeah, because I was a Methodist and I was preaching to the Buddhists. And so all the Buddhist people say, how come a Methodist, a Japanese Methodist, is coming to San Jose to teach Buddhism when he's a Methodist? That doesn't. So my dad got in trouble because he was the president of the Buddhist thing. And he says, how come your son is not Buddhist? I wasn't Buddhist.
Yes.
Yeah, but everybody else in our family was Buddhist. I was a Methodist. So anyway, I don't know. I kind of answered your question.
Oh, you did.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I was going to ask Barry, how were the accommodations? Was it comfortable, or like for example, you didn't have to have a lot of luggage, or so everything looked primitive.
Mitsu, when I travel, I travel with 2 pairs of shorts, maybe 3 tops, 4 tops, maybe, right? And so I'm such a basic traveler because when you're traveling in Asia, for me at least, when I'm traveling in Asia, there's no formality, right? And so the word long pants is stupid, right? Because it's always warm there. And so, so at the end of a couple of days, everything goes to a woman and you give them to the laundry and you say, I'd like it back. And you get all of your stuff back that's been washed and folded, and it may cost you $3 or $1 or whatever it happened to be. It's just, taking luggage, I found causes me more grief. I always tell people, look, I can buy stuff there. Right? I bring more stuff home than I ever bring there.
Yeah.
How many days were you there?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Okay.
Yeah, and I was there a month in Southeast Asia on that trip because we spent. I always spend 3-4 days in Bangkok to get my brain settled, and then when you make your flight reservations, I think it costs $70 to fly from Bangkok to Mandalay. It's so cheap when you're there, and nobody makes reservations, right? Because Americans always think, well, I got to make a reservation. Okay, you just go to the airport and every 3-4 hours, there's a goddamn airplane flying there and you get on an airplane. It costs you $60, $70 because these people have no money. So when you have no money, they don't have computers anyway. So if they want to travel or move, it's dirt cheap and they fly all the time, Steve.
There's another reason why
leather
it's so
helmet
cheap.
and goggles.
Helmet and goggles for what?
Leather helmet and goggles when you're flying.
Goggles. Come on.
No, it's surprising. It's something I found quite a few years back in Asia. You just pick your point. Like I said, I could get airfare from San Francisco to Bangkok for usually under $800. And then when you're there, you can go anywhere you want. It costs nothing. You can go into Bangkok and you can find a place, you asked about the accommodations. If you want a really nice place, maybe you'll spend $100, right, at the outside right? If you want to go into a Hilton or to a Marriott, you're going to spend $250, $300, and it's just stupid, right? And it's just a bed and a shower.
You'll
Anyway,
do well in Scotland, Barry.
thank you.
The toilets.
So Barry, when you said you eat a lot of the vegetables, are they cooked or are they raw or?
No, the Asian, whether it's in Thailand or Burma or wherever, the street vendors generally have a little cart, they have a wok, they have maybe a propane tank, and they heat it up, right? It'll either be stir fry. So, and then they'll ask you, what do you want? And so I'll tell them what I want. I should, point to what I want, and they'll make a stir fry. And the rice will be in a plastic container, and they'll open the top up and plunk a little bit of rice out for you. And then they make this really nice vegetable stir fry. You sit down, you eat it, and you get yourself a beer, and maybe you've spent $1 or $1.50, and you go, you have to get the mindset that they're trying to poison you, because if you live like the people, they don't have any money. They're not being poisoned. You just have to just live accordingly. And so
So you make a quick dash to that structure at the back of the building.
Well, I could show you a whole set of pictures on bathrooms I've taken. I'm not going to do that. That's a whole nother thing when you move around the world about bathrooms. I mean,
how did they make the beer there?
Beer. I don't know. I didn't get into that. They have their own beer, the Burmese do, and I'm sure it's probably it comes from somewhere. I don't know, Eric, but it's all, most importantly for me, it's capped. I uncap it, I clean the top, and I start drinking, and I'm happy. So
do you get bottled water too, or you just use the bitter for the liquid?
No. 90% of the time, wherever you go, you'll see bottled water, right? I mean, the Thais and the Burmese and the Cambodians, all of them. So even all those containers, let's say a 1 liter container of Coca-Cola, which I hate, I don't drink, but people use that for gasoline. So you'll see in front of a house, they'll have a little stand and they'll have a 1 liter container of gasoline. So I rent mopeds many times. And so I'll be on a moped. If I'm low on fuel, I come up to a little house and they're selling a liter of fuel. Well, it's in a container of Coca-Cola. So if you want Cokes and that stuff, it's everywhere. Water's everywhere. You may go a couple of hours if you ran out of maybe not some fluids, but it's no big deal.
Did you ever get sick?
Okay, I've gotten sick in Mexico, but in Asia, no. Because of my rule, and I started this 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, when I used to go to Mexico a lot, because the Mexicans had the same problem. If it didn't pop and if it didn't fizzle, I don't drink it, right? So if it can't be unscrewed, I don't want it, right? So don't give me any ice. I don't want ice, right? Because I have no idea where that water was or went to or went from, right? But if it comes out of a container, I know that I'm real. So your answer is no, I have not gotten ill in Asia. I got ill in Mexico, but not Asia.
Good.
And the other thing about getting sick overseas, I have gotten sick, sick with an upset stomach. Maybe I ate some bad food or whatever it happened to be. So all of their pharmacies over there, you can get anything you want, right? So you can walk in, you want some antibiotics or you want some cortisone cream with extra stuff in it or whatever, where we have to get prescriptions, go to the doctor. You just walk in and talk to the pharmacist and tell him what your problem is, and he'll diagnose it and he'll give you whatever it is, and away you go.
Did you find that many people did speak English? Like if you were to go into a pharmacy and try and have that conversation?
Yes. A pharmacist is an educated person, okay?
Yeah, that's
so
true.
Where we just were in Inle Lake, and so if you in Yangon or if you went to Mandalay, if you went into a pharmacy, English is the required language, right? So they're an educated person and they'll speak English. And if they don't, as I said, now my number one question always is to the taxi driver, not just how much is it, do you speak English? Because I need to have somebody who is my intermediary between whatever the population is or wherever I am.
Yeah. You showed a lot of pictures or talked about how prevalent the peanuts are. Do you hear about peanut allergies in Burma? I mean, it's become such an issue in the U.S.
Jean, okay, if we're old enough to know that if you go back 25, 30 years, 35 years, the word peanut allergy was not in our vocabulary.
I know, not in our growing up.
Okay, it wasn't in anybody's, right? So the Asians, their number one problem is to eat something, right? And so the word peanut allergy, it never was brought up. It was just, you know, I mean, it's like if one of my friends would go along and they're gluten free, I'm sorry, you'd starve. You just have to be flexible to wherever you are.
I guess, but in Asia, Barry, they're more lactose intolerant. That's the biggest thing, right?
Eric, there are issues that I've never dealt with and I don't know enough about to tell you. All I know is they're wonderful people. They are generous. They're kind. The Buddhism makes them kind. I mean, they're the kindest people I've met in the world, right? I mean, an American will walk around and never give you eye contact, right? You go to Asia, almost everybody will give you an eye contact. Yeah. And, you know, you go to a McDonald's in Bangkok and outside of a McDonald's is Ronald McDonald standing there like this. Okay. So it's a different, you know, it's a different mindset.
Oh, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was really
good. I did.
Very nice.
Very interesting. Thank you.
So who's doing the next one? Since I missed a couple, you know, I enjoy these. And Eric, you going to do another one? Or Barry?
I've got a whole bunch, but I'll talk to Barry first.
No, I've got a whole bunch too, and Eric is next up. I've got to work on my next one, which should be Cambodia.
Oh yes,
that'll be good.
Eric, do hiking in New Zealand.
That
was my favorite trip.
Well, what do you call her? Not Barbara.
Linda.
Who?
Linda.
Linda.
No.
Linda.
Oh God! Last week too. No.
No,
Barry. That was. I've been trying to get hold of Sue Swackhammer because she sailed. You know, her and her husband alone on like a 42-foot sailboat sailed from here down towards Mexico and then headed off across to Australia and New Zealand.
Wow.
I mean, and that was it. This is just two of them on board the boat, their own boat. And let me tell you, can you imagine going 40 days with just you and your wife across? I mean, let me tell you. Anyway, but so I was trying to get her a hold of her that presentation, but I haven't been able to get hold of her yet. But yeah, no, I was asked last week to do the very first one, the Patagonia one. But that's that was Patagonia, that's southern Chile and also Argentina. And I need to try to cut it down because it'd be too long, I think. And I've got probably a better one, which is Peru, which is the whole Lake Titicaca and Machu Picchu, of course, but also the Sacred Valley and all. I mean, it's got a whole bunch of. Actually, I was thinking of maybe we did a hike, we did Zion and Bryce Canyon. And I know I can get that down to less than an hour. And so I thought maybe I would do that, but I'll talk to Barry about it and see.
Okay.
But yeah, New Zealand, Mitsu went with us. Mitsu, that was our second trip was New Zealand, and that was a real good trip too.
Yeah, and Linda didn't like my driving.
Yeah, that's true. That's right.
You drive on the other side of the road, and I was always on the wrong side.
Oh yeah, that was a fun trip.
Yeah,
that was.
Anyway, Barry, enjoyed it.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you, Barry.
Thanks,
really
Barry.
was.
Thanks,
Barry.
Barry. See you next
Fascinating.
time.
We'll see you hiking, as they say.
Oh, Janice, how about you and Chris doing one?
No,
No, but you guys have been a lot of places.
no.
Not that- where do you want to go, Eric?
Oh, anywhere.
We went to Patagonia and all that, so leave that one up to you.
Okay.
Have you been to the Atacama Desert or not?
Excuse. Yeah.
Did you
Okay,
go to the
folks.
Atacama when you were in Chile?
Okay.
Where was that, Chris?
Did you go to the Atacama Desert when you were down in Chile?
The Atacama
No,
Desert.
no, we never.
No.
But we were at one of the REI programs where there were a couple went and did the Atacama Desert. We were close to it, but no, we never did it.
Yeah, we done that one.
Ah.
Good.
Did you enjoy it?
Did you like it?
Yeah.
Yeah, great place.
Yeah.
And
So
what do
see
you
you
like?
next week.
It would be good if somebody else other than Eric and I threw one in there. We've all been places that are interesting, and it's just I don't know you, Janice, but I guarantee you've got an interesting trip.
We've had a few.
Well, shared with the rest of us in the world who cannot get out right now.
We could do a good one on California.
That's fine. There's probably things in California all of us haven't seen.
Barry, were you affected with the fire?
Well, it's about 15 miles away, and we were affected the last few days by smoke. And so it's mostly smoke. The actual fire, there's no evacuation or anything like that. And I wouldn't evacuate anyway, but nothing has gotten close. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a friend lost her home.
Thanks. Gotta go.
Yeah.
Thank you, Al.
Very
Richard,
Bye,
now.
folks.
See you guys.
Now.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Dan.
Stop video. Oh, leave. Leave that.
Yossi, I'll kill it for you if you want.